Hello everyone, and welcome to my spoilery review of RWBY Volume 4. I said it would happen, and I am a man of my word, but before we get into it, I want to mention something. So, originally, I was going to go all out with this review, picking apart each scene piece by piece and giving my thoughts and opinions on them. But, as I was writing the script for such a video, I realized that I neither have the patience, nor time, nor motivation to record, edit, and render a video that fucking big. So instead, what I'm going to do is give a condensed version of my review in this video, and then post the script for the full-length review on Reddit and put a link in the description. If you want to read it, you're welcome to. If not, just watch this video for some general opinions. Okay, so before we begin, I'd like to hand out this little warning. The title of this video is intended to be ironic. This is not a completely fair and unbiased review of RWBY Volume 4. This is my personal opinions on the quality of the 4th volume of a show that I love more than I love my family. Just because I'm head over heels for this show doesn't mean I can't recognize its flaws. It's very heavily flawed, and I'm going to mention a lot of constructive criticism during this video. There are a multitude of scenes and things in there that just don't work. But do remember when I hand out this criticism that I love this show with a burning passion, no matter how it may stumble. Also, a lot of the criticisms I had with RWBY Volumes 1 and 2 completely disappeared with 3. So keep in mind that Volume 5 has yet to air, and this volume will probably be a lot better in retrospect, once more volumes are piled on top of it. Alright, now that that's out of the way, let's hop into it. I'll start by addressing the Goliath in the room. Volume 3 was a tough act to follow. It was basically the turning point for the entire series, the part where everybody got their heart broken by the dark turn and suddenly understood the point of the show. Before, it was rad, but it always felt limited or incomplete, as if it was building for something that would never come. So, when that something came, it was super satisfying, well executed, and just all around fucking great. I remember watching the credits roll and just laughing with delight, thinking the show is free now. It's free from its previous restrictions. It can take this awesome world and these lovable characters and actually do something really cool with them. So, does it? First off, a couple of disclaimers / things I want to get out of the way. No, this volume is not as dark or as good as Volume 3, and that is a good thing. We gotta have our valleys to appreciate our peaks, people. There will be more Volume 3s in the future, I assure you. Second is the controversial thing that you should have noticed by now, assuming you haven't seen the volume yet. The new visuals. I'll admit, I really wasn't sure about the new visuals at first. There's no denying the show looks better, but I was worried it wouldn't really have that same sort of feel to it. Like RWBY was abandoning its signature art style in search of better graphics. And early on, I'll admit, I wasn't a fan of them. I thought they just didn't fit. But a few episodes later, I got used to them, and now I fucking love them. This volume is legitimately gorgeous at times. Fluid dynamics are amazing. The Grimm look better than they ever have. Environments feel well crafted, like the setting is a real movie set, perfect for the tone and story. Character animation is still a little wonky, but it's certainly an improvement. If you don't like the look of things at first, give it some time. The visuals will grow on you, I promise. Then there's the other new visuals, the new character designs. I want to find whoever made them and give them a hug because they are fucking beautiful. Everyone looks awesome. RWBY looks like a badass vampire hunter that also happens to be adorable. Weiss looks like an actual princess. Blake looks like a rogue / military general / pirate. And Yang looks depressed, which she is. Sean now carries Pyrrha with him in his character design, which is awesome. Ren and Nora don't change much other than subtle differences. They just look older. And better. The little details should really be praised, like the way Crescent Rose is all battle-worn and damaged, and how Nora's little heart has a tear through it. Even on some characters that don't get the full treatment of a whole new design, you'll notice little things that are very indicative of dealing with the shit show that was Volume 3. For example, the one that everyone noticed. Sun seems to have had trouble keeping up his workout routine. But he's also wearing a medallion now, which makes me think it has something to do with his family in Vacuo or his past. It makes sense that he'd be more reminiscent or sentimental after experiencing what he did. There's also Ironwood, who is noticeably thinner and unshaven, which makes complete sense. He's been spending his time trying to prevent everyone from killing each other. He's probably got stress leaking out of his earlobes. So yeah, everything related to the graphics I fucking love. Moving on. So this volume is divided into 4 different arcs and 2 mini arcs that aren't really arcs. Arc. There's the Ranger plus Crow arc, the Weiss arc, the Blake and Sun arc, the Yang and Tai arc, the Salem arc, and the Oscar and Ozpin arc. If that sounds like a lot for one 12-episode season of a low-budget web show, you'd be correct. There is a lot going on. I'll talk more about that later. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to tackle the Oscar and Salem arcs since they're too small to really even consider arcs, and then I'll go through the other arcs in order from least good to most good. Alright, so Oscar. Oscar's arc came up out of fucking nowhere. I don't think anyone expected Oscar to crop up. Maybe Ozpin, but not in this way in the slightest. But it works. Oscar is a little hard to characterize at the moment, but his relationship with Ozpin is fun, so that's cool. I am kind of left wondering if his aunt will ever matter again, but what else, that doesn't really matter. Honestly, everything that's going on here just kind of works, and has potential for the future. But, as I said, it's not really given enough attention to stand up on its own. Also, can I just say that the way Ozpin has to convince him he's not insane, while Crow and the rest wait for Ozpin to get him up to speed, totally reminds me of the Lives of Tao? What? No one knows what that is? Well, whatever. Then there's the Salem and Cinder arc, which is basically just there so that all the stuff that happens to the heroes isn't completely out of fucking nowhere, and so that Cinder gets set up a little more for the future. I won't go into detail into my views on all of the villains, or that would take ages, but Tyrion is really entertaining, Cinder has been put in a position where she's actually interesting for once, and Salem is kind of boring. She doesn't really do anything all volume other than be a bitch, and at the moment she doesn't connect to any one of our protagonists other than maybe Ozpin. Alright, now that that's out of the way, let's go in order from least to greatest. Last place goes to Weiss. This isn't because Weiss is a bad character or anything like that, but the actual story here is really lacking. It started off fairly strong, with Weiss dealing with the whole Volume 3 fiasco in fairly interesting ways, and Ironwood being a fucking badass, but it sort of just fell off towards the end. Papa Shani is really one-dimensional in that his only two personality traits are greedy and asshole. The way the relationship between her father was teased in the past made it sound complicated and textured, not so simple as the guy's a dick. Whitley is a bit more interesting, but him being an untrustworthy ass was probably the most predictable plot twist since Penny being a robot. But the biggest problem I have with this arc is that it has no climax. With the summoning and the argument and all of that build-up, you'd think it'd be building to some kind of final confrontation with her father or Whitley at least. But she escapes with almost no problems. Honestly, if that had happened, if we'd gotten proper payoff from all that build-up, this arc would be way better than our next arc. Speaking of our next arc, second to last place goes to Blake and Sun. This arc is a bit better since it follows traditional narrative structure rather than just doing whatever, but it suffers from the way it paints its two main characters. And yeah, if you really think about it, you can justify their actions, but on the surface, Blake is such a bitch and Sun is such a stalker. Kali and Gira are pretty great, but Blake doesn't open up until the end of the volume, and Sun obviously cares about Blake a lot, but since we never see from his point of view, he just seems like a total fucking stalker. And as a result, the romantic moments come off as a little forced. Blake goes from acting as if she hates Sun's guts to acting like she likes him in an instant, and it leaves you kinda confused. In contrast to the last arc, this arc has a climax, but it's weirdly orchestrated and not very climactic. So yeah, this arc just stumbles really bad in what it sets out to accomplish, but at least what it sets out to accomplish isn't that bad. Think of the difference between the Weiss and Blake arcs as the difference between Suicide Squad and Batman v Superman. One of them knows what it wants to be, but what it wants to be is kinda bad, and it doesn't even really accomplish that. And then the other one just kinda isn't really sure what it's doing. See, this is the problem. I had the idea in my head that this would be a 4-minute video. I'm long-winded when it comes to RWBY, okay? Alright, so our second best arc goes to Yang Xiaolong. Woohoo! She's back, bitches! Her recovery arc explores fun themes that parallel some of Weiss's themes. It's powerful, it's interesting, it's heartwarming, but it's super rushed. There's no denying that what we get here is fantastic, centered around the fact that Yang and Tai are such good characters. But she picks herself back up a little quickly, making me think the next time she comes across a fight or a life-threatening situation at the very least, she might not actually be as good as she portrays herself. But in all honesty, I don't have much to say beyond that. It's great to see her back, looking good and kicking ass again, even if she comes back and doesn't actually do anything other than go find either her mom or RWBY. You're probably going to rag on me since I criticized Weiss's arc for not having a climax and Yang's arc doesn't have a climax, but Yang's arc, it wasn't really the kind of arc that needed a climax. Weiss's arc had a ton of build-up and made you think it was going to get a climax, and then it didn't. Yang's arc was more slow and natural. Now, let's talk about the Ranger arc. Everyone here is a good and interesting character with a good and interesting arc, except maybe Raven since she only shows up once. But RWBY dealing with the darkness of the world is interesting as usual, Jean is made interesting by the whole Pyrrha thing, and oh man, don't even get me started on Ren and Nora. These two getting actual character development and some much needed time in the spotlight is easily the best part about this whole volume. They both just skyrocketed almost all the way to the top of my favorite characters list. Crow is made interesting by being put into a position of weakness halfway through, and that whole bad luck semblance thing is bound to be interesting in the future. I made a whole video on it. When it comes to the actual story, it's not without its weak points, but one of the best episodes in the whole damn series focuses almost entirely on the Ranger arc, and there is a myriad of fun moments and interesting character developments to be had here. I said it earlier, but I'll say it again. Ren and Nora are the fucking best. And I don't just mean that in terms of their character development, but also in the arc that revolves around them. If every other arc in the volume shared the same level of quality as Ranger's arc, it would have been fucking amazing. But that's not something they could really do with their low budget of time and money. So yeah, those are my opinions on pretty much the whole volume. What else have I not mentioned? Well, the music is just as good as usual. Not just the Jeff Williams stuff either, but most of the OST is really commendable, some of the best you can ask for. No criticisms to be made there, not by me or anyone. Assuming that Volume 3 is a 10 out of 10, I would give Volume 4 a 7 out of 10. It's extremely good at times, managing to be incredibly entertaining no matter what's going on, and manages to give power and meaning to what is essentially a setup volume. It's also pretty good at balancing light and dark themes, and is super good at making you really feel the stakes of every situation. Its fights are for the most part well animated, and it just looks good in general, but it suffers from having far too much going on. It's just trying to balance a bunch of different story threads that will come together in the future, but at the moment have very little to do with each other. Which would normally be fine, but as I said earlier, some of these separate arcs aren't really strong enough on their own. They use a bunch of tricks to make the volume feel more coherent, but they don't really work. As a result, a lot of the stuff that happens will feel really random, especially to the casual viewer. And the writers certainly aren't doing themselves any favors by including all these new characters. Honestly, I think it's better to think of Volume 4 as part of the series as a whole rather than judging it on its own. But that's kind of hard to do since it separates itself with a new visual style and is the beginning of a new arc after the Beacon arc. As I said earlier, I think this volume will be a lot better in retrospect in the same way that Volumes 1 and 2 are a lot better looking back after Volume 3. But is this series just always going to be this way, with all this crazy setup and exposition leading to one little section where some arcs get wrapped up and some get set up for the future? Or is this the beginning of the real story, in which arcs will come and go in a similar way to regular stories with a lot going on? Either way is fine, but if the rest of the show follows a constant cycle of a long-ass section of setup followed by a short little bout of really good payoff for all the exposition, it's going to become wearying and kind of predictable, not to mention how much the show will end up feeling like padding. So yeah, I enjoyed Volume 4 as a whole, but I can't help but feel that the show is in that Volume 2 kind of place where it's not really meant to stand up on its own 2 feet. But I still really like it, so whatever. Alright, that is enough of that. Check out the full review by clicking on the link in the description. If you don't want to, that's fine too. Hope you enjoyed the video. Later!